Olá, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao meu programa semanal, que entra no ar toda semana nesse horário, 4 horas da tarde de domingo, horário do jogo, né? Para quem não curte o jogo do dia, meu programa é uma boa opção. Essa semana eu vou mostrar 2 reportagens do The Real News, legendado em inglês. A primeira é sobre um assunto que eu levo muito a sério, né? O novo onda de desmatamento e genocídio contra povos indígenas dentro do Mata Amazônica. Quando eu estava em Rondônia, 2 semanas atrás, eu descobri que a razão principal que o estado de Rondônia foi desmateado significativamente durante a década de 1980 foi por causa de uma parceria entre o governo brasileiro da ditadura militar e o Banco Mundial. Basicamente, a ideia era do Banco Mundial. Vamos abrir a estrada BR-364 e uma rede de outras estradas conectando com ele para desmatar uma grande parte do estado de Rondônia para criar gado. O Banco Mundial emprestou 460 milhões de dólares para o governo da ditadura, sem nenhuma consulta com o povo brasileiro, para ver se eles quis bancar isso, pois demorou mais de 20 anos para devolver os pagamentos com juros. O valor de 460 milhões de dólares no dinheiro de hoje é mais do que 1 bilhão. Então, toda aquela época, que eu lembro bem, durante a década de 1990, enquanto pessoas como Fernando Henrique Cardoso falou que não podia financiar educação pública e saúde direito por causa do débito externo, parte disso era nas costas do desmatamento do estado do Rondônia. E eu publiquei uma matéria recentemente em inglês chamada sobre a rondonização do estado do Amazonas e o estado de Acre, porque parece que o que está acontecendo agora é que o governo Bolsonaro eles acham que aquele modelo falido é bom para a Amazônia. É isso que ele está tentando fazer na Amazônia com o asfaltamento do BR-319. Isso que ele está querendo fazer em Acre. E o Intercept publicou uma matéria recentemente mostrando que ele está tentando fazer isso no norte do Pará também. Ou seja, desmatamento, construção de hidroelétricas, devastação do mato, em nome de quê? Os interesses dos multinacionais, das corporações gringos que vêm do norte, que vêm de outra parte do mundo. Ou seja, está abrindo todo agora para os gringos, né? A gente sabe que o Cargill, que vem infelizmente do meu país, e foi a empresa que lucrou mais dinheiro ano passado do que qualquer outra empresa no mundo, 152 bilhões de dólares, eles são muito envolvidos extraindo soja da nossa região amazônica. Até eles anunciou, quando eles decidiu que Lula não seria mais candidato, ano passado, eles anunciou que iria quase dobrar o tamanho do terminal de soja deles no Rio Madeira, na beira do BR-319, ao lado do chamado Arco dos Incêndios, onde ele está fazendo desmatamento geral, perto da cidade de Humaitá e Apuí, no sul do Amazonas. Ou seja, pelo governo, é tudo ok, entrega tudo para os gringos. E a gente viu o que aconteceu com Temer. Quando Temer assumiu, ele entregou 75% do pré-sal para os gringos, quando o preço era baixo. Agora, com esse ataque contra a refinaria principal da Arábia Saudita, o petróleo está pulando para cima de novo. Quem está lucrando com isso não é os brasileiros, são os gringos. Ele sugou nosso petróleo e agora está lucrando, e o Brasil saiu perdendo. E a mesma coisa está acontecendo com o Mata Amazônia. Toda essa fala do ministro Araújo é papo furado. Ele fala sobre soberania. Como que pode ser soberania? Se Cargill está construindo um terminal de soja para exportar 6 milhões de toneladas de soja da Amazônia para o norte, né? Como que você pode dizer que é soberania quando os Estados Unidos vai tomar conta do base do Alcântara? Não tem soberania nenhuma. Brasil virou estado fantoche dos Estados Unidos e suas alinhadas capitalistas imperialistas do norte. É isso que aconteceu. E pelo governo parece que eles não têm problema nenhum com isso. Pega gringos, pega a Amazônia. Isso que está acontecendo. Se eles estão preocupados dos gringos pegando a Amazônia, por que está abrindo para Arthur Daniels Midland, Bunge e Cargill sugar todo no Amazônia? Sugar todo. Por que eles estão abrindo para os companhias de mineração do Canadá, da África do Sul, dos Estados Unidos? Você sabe que eles não vão gerar muito emprego, não vai ter emprego digno gerado do nada disso. E quem vai lucrar são os gringos. O Brasil vai continuar caindo, voltando como ele estava quando eu mudei para cá em 1991, quando não podia andar 100 metros sem ver uma família inteira morando em caixas de papelão nas ruas de Copacabana. Então, eu estou bastante preocupado disso, obviamente, porque eu amo o Brasil, eu não vou embora, eu amo esse país, eu moro aqui há 25 anos, eu sou um imigrante. E por causa disso que a primeira programa que eu vou mostrar para vocês é uma entrevista com um dos diretores do Amazon Watch sobre como o Bolsonaro está entregando a Amazônia para os gringos, basicamente, né? O segundo reportagem que eu vou mostrar também acho bastante interessante por essa porcentagem da população brasileira que acha que os Estados Unidos é uma Valhalla, uma utopia onde é tudo perfeito. Agora, o governo dos Estados Unidos, o governo Trump, abriu uma parceria com os israelenses para lançar drones na fronteira de México e Estados Unidos. Para quê? Para vigiar o povo americano. Com as novas tecnologias que tem, eles podem vigiar 100% da população de uma cidade o tempo todo. Onde eles vão, com quem eles conversam. Está virando como o livro do George Orwell, 1984. E por causa disso eu quis mostrar, porque a gente sabe que Bolsonaro também está querendo fazer esse tipo de parceria com os israelenses. Então esse é meu segundo reportagem que vou mostrar. Espero que vocês gostem. Obrigado por assistir e uma boa tarde para todos e todas de vocês.
This is Dimitri Lascaris reporting for the Real News Network from Montreal, Canada. The United States and Brazil governments reached an agreement to promote private sector development in the Amazon. The agreement was reached during a meeting in Washington, D.C. last Friday. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Brazil's Foreign Minister Ernesto Araujo both argued that such development would actually help protect the Amazon. Here's what Foreign Minister Araujo had to say after last Friday's meeting.
We want to be together in the endeavor to create development for the Amazon region, which we are convinced that is the only way to really protect the forest. So we need new initiatives, new productive initiatives that create jobs, that create revenue for people in the Amazon, and that's where our partnership with the United States will be very important for us.
The portion of the Amazon rainforest that is in the country of Brazil has been subjected to over 80,000 fires this year alone, which represents nearly a doubling of the number of fires compared to 2018. Environmentalists blame the government of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro for most of this increase because he has encouraged developers to take over rainforest land. Joining me now to discuss these alarming and related developments in the Amazon rainforest is Christian Poirier. He has coordinated Amazon Watch's Brazil program since 2009. He joins us today from Oakland, California. Thank you for coming back onto the Real News, Christian.
Thanks for having me.
So, Christian, let's get your reaction, first of all, to this claim made by Mr. Araujo and Mr. Pompeo that development is needed to protect the Amazon rainforest. How do you respond to that?
Well, we need to look at development for who and for what. It's not untrue to say that the people of the Amazon, of which there's 25 million people living in the Brazilian Amazon, they need real sustainable economies and real jobs with dignity to develop their communities, to feed their families. And in order to have this, we need to see the kind of economies that keep the forest standing, unlike precisely what Jair Bolsonaro and his regime are proposing. It's also important to recognize that Ernesto Araújo is a rabid climate denier. He calls climate change a Marxist theory or conspiracy. So anything coming out of that man's mouth should not be taken with any real credibility. He speaks for a regime that is also totally non-credible when it comes to talking about protecting the Amazon, because it is driving the wholesale destruction of the Amazon. It is wholly responsible for what is taking place today in the Amazon.
Part of the rationale for promoting this so-called development, it would seem, is that it would help provide a $100 million fund for biodiversity conservation. If that were to happen, I imagine that you, Amazon Watch, would be of the view that that's a good thing. How do you respond to that particular argument in favor of this so-called development?
Well, this accord is extremely short on details. It talks about developing sustainable value chains, and it talks about spurring growth in the Amazon. But when we look at the coordination of two regimes that are entirely anti-environmental, denying climate science, we cannot expect that so-called biodiversity conservation will be a priority of so-called development. What we have seen is Bolsonaro calling on the US government and US investors to spur investment in the most destructive industries in Brazil, from agribusiness to mining in the Brazilian Amazon. Therefore, the real messaging we're seeing, besides this sort of greenwashed declaration that was made last week, is extremely troubling and is not pointing towards the truly sustainable and responsible and ethical development that the Amazon really needs to keep standing and to respect its forest peoples, including its indigenous peoples, who want development. They just don't want the development that we're seeing today.
And finally, Christian, Human Rights Watch just published a report titled Rainforest Mafias, in which the Amazon's deforestation is said to be largely driven by criminal gangs that attack government officials, environmentalists, and indigenous peoples who try to stop the destruction of the rainforest. According to Human Rights Watch, 28 people have been killed in relation to deforestation over the past 4 years. What is your sense of the Bolsonaro government's degree of culpability for this? And do you think that that report is telling us the full story of Bolsonaro's culpability?
Yes, I think what Human Rights Watch did with their report was demonstrate the brutality of Brazil's logging sector. And it's important to recognize the fires today are set in areas that have been illegally logged previously. So they were illegally logged and the fires were set there. Illegal deforestation in Brazil goes hand in hand with the rampant fires we're seeing today. And members of Brazil's federal police said that 90% of timber coming out of Brazil today should be considered illegal. So this is an extremely brutal and destructive industry. And it's being facilitated by the policies of Jair Bolsonaro, which has opened the floodgates to human rights abuses and environmental destruction in the Amazon, and really given birth to the kind of impunity that we're seeing flourish in the Amazon today. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's become extremely aggravated under Jair Bolsonaro. And the logging industry, you could say that, okay, poverty drives the degradation of the Amazon, as Brazil's so-called environmental minister, Ricardo Salles, has said. But the people that are actually doing the deforestation today are working in slave-like conditions. This is not the kind of, dignified work that we need to see the people of the Amazon employed doing in order to feed their families and to develop their communities. It's precisely the backwards and predatory capitalist model that we would expect that Bolsonaro and the US government under President Trump would like to impose on the people of the Amazon, rather than create a dialogue and really create sort of development that people on the ground need.
Well, I've been speaking to Christian Poirier, coordinator of Amazon Watch's Brazil program, about a new plan by the Brazilian and American governments to accelerate so-called development in the Amazon rainforest. Thank you very much for joining us today, Christian.
Thanks again for having me.
And this is Dimitri Lascaris reporting for the Real News Network.
Walls work. Just ask Israel. They work. Believe me, they work.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Mark Steiner. Good to have you with us. Now, as a follow-up to our discussion with Will Parrish about his Intercept article, on the use of an Israeli security company to build and manage surveillance technology on the Tono Odom Reservation to monitor the border and the native people who live there, we're going to speak with Jay Stanley, who is a senior policy analyst for the Americans of Liberties Union's Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project. He was quoted throughout the article, pointing out the dangers that this surveillance technology portends for our entire nation and our democracy. These systems, known as persistence surveillance technologies, can monitor the minutest of behaviors and movements, collecting information on us without our even being aware of anything going on. The Border Patrol, which partners with the Israeli military technology company Elbit Systems to build and maintain these intricate monitoring technologies, has jurisdiction within 100 miles from the edges of our nation that could potentially surveil 2/3 of the American people. Welcome, Jay Stanley, to The Real News. Good to have you with us.
Good to be on.
In the article, you were quoted as being concerned about the repurposing of the surveillance tower and drones to surveil dissidents because you think it hints at other possible abuses. Your quote here was exactly, "It's a reminder that technologies that are sold for one purpose, such as protecting the border or stopping terrorists or whatever the original jurisdiction might happen to be, so often get repurposed for other reasons, such as targeting protesters." Then there was this email by Border Patrol agent in charge, Christopher Seiler, who runs the agency's Rio Grande Valley section, and he described the political opposition to Trump's border policies as a threat. And in that same email to more than 30 other supervisory agents, he invited them to a seminar called Large-Scale Protest Response Seminar that was led by Paul Laney, the former sheriff of Cass County, North Dakota, who served as the leading architect of the militarized police response to the Standing Rock demonstrations. In his email, Sala wrote, quote, "The current political climate uptick in demonstrations and social media campaigns, along with the immigration debate, almost ensure that the Rio Grande Valley will have large-scale protests. These protests pose a significant threat to the border, law enforcement, and our communities." So I'm bringing this all up, Jay, because I want you to comment on this and what it means, portends when you start using this technology in other places and what that relationship means.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of reasons to oppose pervasive surveillance structures in American life and letting the government build systems that can watch us and, as has been said, create a TiVo in our lives, giving the government the power, if it chooses to and focuses on you for whatever reason, to literally hit rewind on your life, see everywhere that you've been, who you've been with for days or weeks or months or even years, which is what a lot of these wide area persistent surveillance technologies would enable. There are a lot of reasons to oppose that kind of a technology, but one of them is the persistent history, unfortunately, in this country of the authorities abusing their powers, not to carry out the mission that we, the public, give them, our public servants, to do, which is protect the border, stop crime, et cetera, but to go after people because of their political views. Going back to the labor battles of the early 20th century and late 19th century, up through the civil rights and anti-war battles and a lot of what we've seen since 9/11, the post 9/11 era, we have persistently seen law enforcement and government security agencies confuse their mission, which is to protect the public, to protect order, which is an important mission, with protecting the current order, with fighting people who are peacefully advocating for change, who are peacefully challenging the powers that be. And they have no evidence that protesters are planning to commit a crime, and yet they kick into gear all these tools that we have given them to prevent crime. So we see both sort of law enforcement and agencies taking sides on political issues, but also often abusing their powers to defend their own agencies. We know that bureaucracies always defend themselves. And so we sometimes see, as with in this case, when an agency is criticized or is threatened, and we saw this with J. Edgar Hoover, it kicks in its powers in order to defend itself. And this is one of the big reasons why we need to be very, very careful about giving the government new surveillance powers.
Well, one of the exact quotes from this email, apparently, is that the current political climate uptick in demonstrations and social media campaigns, along with the immigration debate, almost ensures that the Rio Grande Valley will have large-scale protests, and going on to say these protests pose a significant threat to the border, law enforcement, and our communities. So if you tie this together with their surveilling in San Diego for demonstrations, where only one took place against Trump, to their massive overkill in terms of surveillance in South Dakota when people were protesting the pipeline construction. So this is technology that was supposed to be used at the border, but it is affecting people who live on that native land, being stopped all the time for IDs, as well as being used throughout the country as kind of testing how this might work in other places. And you have this huge agency that's doing this, that has power within 100 miles of every border and the ocean that borders this country. I mean, this really needs to give us pause about what this could mean. I mean, if they actually implement this in any major way, they could be surveilling 2/3 of the entire country without our knowledge, not knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, I guess I'd make 3 quick points. Number one, these border agencies, CBP and so forth, they are very troubled agencies that have a long history of engaging in abuses and have insufficient oversight, insufficient responses to abuses that are brought to their attention. So there's that. And yes, our border communities are being subject to enormous surveillance and harassment because they live on the border. They're American communities like any other. They don't deserve to live under the constant eye of a government agency, any government agency, much less one that has such a record of abuse. They deserve to be able to live their lives without being stopped and harassed constantly. And yet that's what's happening, and that's what these towers are part of. And then the third point is, yes, there is a larger looming nationwide battle that's coming, which is, do we want to allow our communities to be subject to wide area persistent surveillance? We've seen this with a company that flies airplanes over cities for hours and hours, basically all day, and it was deployed in Baltimore.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And this is a technology that's being pushed on police departments. The police departments are thinking about, are tempted by. Hasn't really been deployed except in the test in Baltimore, but these companies are looking for other clients. And so that is a battle that we are going to have. Do we want to go as a nation? Do we want to go down this road of allowing the government to see everything all the time from the air, from towers, from airplanes, from drones, from satellites, whatever it may be? Is that the kind of country that we want to live in and the kind of power that we want to give to these agencies?
Well, given the potential of what this could be in terms of surveillance of the American people, going way beyond what's happening to the Tohono O'odham people in the Arizona border and the people off the border itself, I mean, so what is our response? I mean, you work for the ACLU. I mean, what is our response to this, to stop it, to control it, to not allow it to take on life of its own? Because these things just don't kind of come over like a sledgehammer and hit you. They kind of seep in. And this is seeping. And as you were quoted in the article, I think you alluded to the fact that if the only reason we're not paying attention to this is because it's on the border and people don't really care that much. I mean, but this is where it begins. Or could begin, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a political moment where obviously immigration is a hugely divisive issue. We have political leaders that are pushing fear of immigrants and demonizing immigrants in ways to increase their own political power. And so, there is a lot of support among much of the country for doing anything to stop or slow immigration. But and also, the government does have legitimately expanded powers on the border that they don't have elsewhere in the country, although the government's definition of a border coming 100 miles inland is ridiculous. But on the border proper, like the line between two countries, the government does have expanded powers of search and detention there, but it's not something that it should expand into the rest of American life. And there's a very serious risk that it will. And often we see new technologies being applied to certain populations, children, the incarcerated, immigrants, and so forth. And they start there because those are the least controversial populations to engage in surveillance with, and then they expand outwards. And so, I think that there's a lot of people in this country who, think of themselves as anti-government and anti-immigrant, but they're shooting themselves in the foot by failing to oppose surveillance technologies because they think that they're limited to the immigration context. But in fact, they're going to come around and affect all of us. What can we do? I mean, we're the ACLU. We filed numerous lawsuits on behalf of people in border communities who are being subject to harassment and checkpoints and surveillance and so forth. So there's the courts as far as that goes, and we're doing the best we can in that arena. My colleagues in those areas. One thing that local communities can do is pass legislation that we recommend called CCOPS, or Community Control Over Police Surveillance. And we're seeing a number of cities around the country that have passed or are currently considering this kinds of legislation. And what it does is it basically bans the police, local police, from using or deploying new surveillance technologies without getting the permission of local elected leaders. Because often what we see is local police departments get a big pile of money falls in their lap from the Department of Homeland Security or Justice Department or sometimes from vendors, and they just go buy new surveillance technology and just deploy it without telling, let alone asking, the communities that they serve. And so these ordinances prevent the police from doing that and require there to be a conversation with the community about whether the community wants these surveillance technologies to be deployed. Now, that's not going to work if we're talking about feds here.
Right, right.
That's a much harder political problem. But you can take action in your local community, and a lot of the surveillance technology that we're seeing these days is local in nature. For example, the Baltimore wide area surveillance plane was local. The feds, that's just a national political battle that we have to fight as a country.
What's interesting to me is, before we close, is that politically, which is not the point, that's not the area that you talk about a lot, but politically, here you have people who view themselves as libertarian, not opposing this surveillance technology because it's on native land and with migrants coming from the South. But this could be used for any reason to monitor everybody in this country to ensure political control. I mean, I don't want to be, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I often don't believe in all that stuff, but I just think that this is something that could be really dangerous given the power some of these agencies have and what we're seeing and what we're not paying attention to, which is why I think that Will Parrish's article is so important to kind of bring this to our attention.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be a conspiracy theorist and see there being a secret meeting of people who want to turn America into a surveillance state. But we do have very large security bureaucracies, and bureaucracies tend to push for things that make their lives easier. They tend to push for more and more surveillance and information. They tend to push for defense of their own powers. And we do have a long history in this country of these agencies, as I said, investigating and targeting people because of their political views, not because they're engaged in crime.
Well, Jay Stanley, thank you so much for taking time with us today. I know you have a lot to do. Appreciate the moment you gave us. And we look forward to talking to you again as we continue to cover this.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed being on.
Thank you so much. And I'm Mark Steiner here for the Real News Network. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.